An earnest and tangible feeling of dread took over the control room. There is a reason for that. It reverberated through my entire body as the vibration spoke. But then, silence. No one in the control room spoke a word. We barely even looked at each other. The silence continued for over a minute that felt like a day. What's the reason? Dave, the senior scientist on hand, finally spoke. He had chosen a serious and somber tone, in an endless list of choices on how to react. If you value your lives, if you value the lives of every living thing on your planet, never use this form of communication ever again. It shook into our chests. That one felt less welcoming. It felt like a dire warning. And just like that, we felt the tingling, shaking force leave our chests. It just simply faded away, like how when a chord of a guitar is plucked. We looked now to one another. What was the play? Forge on bravely into the void, in the name of science, and play the frequencies again? Or take an alien warning and stop? We didn't get to make that decision. Our program is monitored closely by the US military. A voice came I didn't recognize on over the intercom. Don't touch anything, folks, we're gonna come in and take a look at a few things. Dave took charge. We were all clearly panicked at what we had experienced, but he seemed to have the most level head. All we can do is tell the truth, he reasoned, just as the door to the control room was opened. The next hour or so was a blur. I was first questioned by my boss as to what he just watched over his monitor. What he saw was a handful of his employees standing in a circle and periodically yelling nonsense at no one in particular. I took Dave's advice to heart, and told him as clearly as I could what happened. I think I was the first he talked to. He wasn't buying anything I said. Slowly I was joined by the rest of the team, one by one, and they recounted pretty much exactly what I had said. So now what they knew was that we had all started a test, then stood around in a circle, and then all came up with the same story. It started to get more believable. We were each rushed to individual physical exams, and then into a more in-depth interview with someone from the military. The exams seemed to go well. I never heard back from them. The interviews seemed to be going good as well. I had basically recounted what I said to my boss word for word, just this time on tape and in front of some guy in an army uniform. Just when things seemed to be wrapping up, the door to our small interviewing office opened behind me. "Sir, we need you down the hall immediately." A woman in army fatigue spoke quickly, before rushing back down the hallway. I looked back to the man interviewing me, but he was already halfway out the door before I could say anything. I was sitting there for a few minutes. I had time to think. Was I crazy if I believed whatever the thing in my chest was telling me? Everything it said sounded impossible. But nothing of it felt like a like. Even though I could only feel what it was saying, I could feel its excitement when we first made contact. I could feel the desperation in it as it told us to never contact it again. What was important though, nothing felt like a lie. I noticed that my interviewer had been taking notes as we spoke. Now that I had been left alone for a few minutes, I thought, what was the harm in taking a peek? I slowly reached over the table and flipped his papers over. They read: Unknown frequency report, subject, my name, significant physical changes to the subject since his last physical 6 months ago according to the base physician after exposure to the frequencies in this report. No cosmetic changes, or complaints of pain or unease. Describes vibrations in chest. Describes hearing voices after being exposed to the frequencies. No history of mental illness. Frequencies that cause mental illness? Breaks with reality? Hallucinations? That's as far as he got before he was interrupted. I slid the papers back across the table and sat back in my chair. All of us had described the same thing, but they were thinking we were all just crazy? It warned us, and the more I thought about it, I wanted to take that warning to heart. I sat up starkly. She said down the hall. The control room was down the hall. With how they rushed us out of there, we didn't even have a chance to turn the machinery off. We didn't even turn a single dial in our stunned states. All they had to do was press a button, and the vibrations would play again. Shit. I exploded out of my seat, through the door and down the hall. I ripped the door of the control room open, to all of the military officers, and a few more scientists standing there in disbelief. I hadn't even heard the vibrations again. But I could hear the voice on the other side, and now, so could they. I just told you to never use this again. It thundered in my chest. A few of the older men in the room grabbed at their chests in pain.
1 second, I need to check something.
It spoke again angrily. You could have gotten away with just using it the once. Twice was too much. His sentence ended in a twinge of fear. He heard you. He's listening right now. And he's coming.